It began with a laugh, a cold, sharp sound that cut through the warm, greasy air of the truck stop diner. All eyes turned to booth number 4, where an old man sat alone, his gnarled hands folded neatly on the formica table. His head was bowed, his lips moving silently over a simple plate of soup and bread. He was praying. And at the counter, 3 men in work flannels, their faces flushed with a long day and something stronger than coffee, were laughing at him. The old man, whose name was Eli, didn't seem to hear them at first, or if he did, he gave no sign. He finished his quiet prayer, made the sign of the cross with a trembling hand, and only then picked up his spoon. The leader of the men at the counter, a burly fellow named Jake, nudged his friends. "You see that?" he said, his voice loud enough to carry. "Think a little prayer's gonna make that broth taste better? Maybe he's asking for a steak to fall from the sky." His friends chuckled, shaking their heads. The waitress, a weary woman named Marion, shot them a warning look, but she was too tired and too busy to do much more. Eli was a fixture at the Crossroads Diner, a lonely stretch of highway where the mountains began to rise. He came every Thursday, always at 5 p.m., always ordering the same vegetable soup and dry toast. He paid with exact change from a small, worn leather coin purse. He spoke little, but his eyes were kind, a faded blue that held a quiet depth. People knew little about him, only that he lived in a small cabin up in the pines, a widower who kept to himself. To the regulars, he was just the praying man, a harmless, slightly sad figure of gentle routine. On this particular Thursday, the sky had been threatening all afternoon. A strange greenish tint hung in the air, and the wind had a restless, whispering edge. Inside the diner, the lights flickered once, casting a brief, nervous shadow. Jake and his friends, emboldened by their own noise, continued. "Hey, old-timer," Jake called out, swiveling on his stool. "You prayin' for better weather? Doesn't look like it's workin'." Eli finally looked up. His gaze wasn't angry or hurt. It was patient, almost pitying. He simply said, in a voice as soft as worn flannel, "I'm praying for safe journeys, for all of us." Then he returned to his soup. The simplicity of his response only fueled them. "Safe journeys?" one of the other men, Roy, snorted. "From what? A little rain? Man, you need to live a little." They ordered more coffee, their mockery shifting to loud boasts about storms they'd driven through, risks they'd taken. They were men of the physical world who believed in what they could see, touch, and conquer. Faith to them was a crutch for the weak. Marion refilled Eli's water glass, her voice low. "Don't mind them, Eli. They don't know any better." Eli offered her a small, grateful smile. "It's all right, child. Sometimes a man has to see to believe, and sometimes seeing comes too late." His words were cryptic, lost to her in the moment. She patted his shoulder and moved on. Outside, the world began to change. The whispering wind grew into a howl. The gentle rain turned into a violent horizontal lash against the windows. The lights flickered again, then died completely, plunging the diner into a gray, storm-ridden gloom. A collective gasp went up. The jukebox sputtered and went silent. Only the frantic, battery-powered glow of the emergency exit sign and the occasional flash of lightning illuminated the shocked faces inside. Jake's bravado vanished. "Whoa," he muttered, peering out at the parking lot where trash cans were tumbling like leaves. "This came out of nowhere." The radio behind the counter, running on a backup battery, crackled to life with a frantic emergency broadcast. "Tornado warning for the county. Radar indicates a potential debris signature. Mobile dangerous storm on the ground near the Highway 5 corridor. Seek immediate shelter." Panic, cold and pure, seized the diner. There were about 15 people inside. Truckers, a young family with 2 small children, a few elderly couples, Marion, and the 3 now silent mockers. "The basement," someone shouted. "About a basement." But Marion, her face pale, shook her head. "It's flooded. Has been for weeks. The pump's broken. It's just a crawl space down there." The children began to cry. The parents held them close, looking wildly for options. The interior bathrooms were too small. The walk-in freezer was a death trap. The diner, with its large glass windows, felt like a fragile trap.
In a flash of lightning, Jake's face was a mask of pure terror. All his swagger was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a man who suddenly understood he was not in control. And then, through the panic, a calm, steady voice spoke. It was Eli. He had stood up from his booth. In the eerie half-light, he seemed different, not frail, but steady. His old frame was straight, his eyes clear and focused. He said, "The storm shelter," he used his voice, carrying above the wind. Everyone stared. "What storm shelter?" Marion asked, confused. "There's no storm shelter out there, Eli. Just the old propane tank and the dumpster." Eli walked to the back door, not with the shuffle of an old man, but with a purposeful stride. He turned the lock and pushed the door open against the gale. "Follow me," he said, and it was not a request, it was a command born of absolute certainty. Driven by fear and lacking any other option, the group huddled together and stumbled out into the punishing rain, following the shadow of the old man. Behind the diner, in a patch of overgrown weeds they'd all passed 1,000 times, Eli knelt. With surprising strength, he grabbed a rusted iron ring buried in the ground and pulled. A heavy, grass-covered door swung upward, revealing a set of concrete steps leading into darkness. A collective shock, more profound than the storm's fury, swept through them. None of them, even Marion, who'd worked there for 20 years, had ever known this was here. "Go, now, quickly," Eli said, ushering them down. He helped the young mother with her children, steadied an elderly man. Jake, Roy, and the third man just stood there, frozen in awe and shame. Eli looked at Jake, and in that moment there was no trace of the mocked old man. "Son," Eli said, his voice somehow both gentle and firm, "your journey isn't over yet. Get inside." That broke their trance. They scrambled down the stairs. Eli was the last to enter. He pulled the heavy door shut above them, plunging them into a profound, damp darkness. Then a single lantern, its light warm and steady, flickered on. Eli had lit it. They were in a small, sturdy concrete room, stocked with bottled water, blankets, and a first aid kit. It was old, but it was safe.
For a long time, the only sounds were the muffled, monstrous roar of the storm above and the ragged breaths of the people huddled together. The children, wrapped in blankets, had stopped crying, soothed by the strange safety of this hidden place. Then the young mother, her voice trembling, asked the question on everyone's mind. "Eli, how did you know? How did you know this was here?" Eli settled onto an old crate, the lantern light casting soft shadows on his wrinkled face. He looked around the shelter, his eyes distant. "I built it," he said simply, "many, many years ago, with my own hands and the hands of my son." He paused, the memory heavy in the quiet space. "My boy, Samuel, he was a storm chaser, a scientist. He loved the sky, loved understanding its power. He taught me to read the clouds, to feel the air. He said this valley was a funnel, that a bad storm would come one day. We built this for the diner, for anyone who might be caught. We tried to tell folks, but, well, people are busy. They forget. Samuel," Eli's voice caught. "Samuel went out chasing a storm like this one 10 years ago. He never came back. This shelter was our last project together." A deep, humbled silence filled the room. Jake, who had been staring at the floor, finally looked up. His eyes were red. "Mr. Eli," he began, his voice thick, I am so sorry for what we said. We were fools." Eli looked at him, and the same gentle patience was there. "No need," he said. "Fear makes us say foolish things, and today fear showed you something you needed to see. Not just the storm, but that there are things we can't see that are real too. Faith, preparation, a father's love that builds a shelter long after he's gone." Above them, the roar reached a terrifying crescendo, then slowly, slowly began to fade.
the violent shaking of the earth subsided. An eternity later, when the silence was complete, Eli climbed the steps and pushed open the door. Daylight, clean and shockingly bright, streamed in. They emerged into a world transformed. The diner's sign was gone, parts of the roof were torn away, trees were snapped like twigs, but the main structure stood, and every single person from the diner was alive, unharmed, standing together in the wreckage. As the group stood in stunned silence, taking in the miracle of their survival, Jake walked over to Eli. Without a word, he extended his hand. Eli took it, and Jake didn't just shake it, he held it, a gesture of gratitude, of apology, of newfound respect. "Thank you," Jake whispered, the words carrying the weight of a changed heart. Eli just nodded, looking at the shelter door, then at the sky clearing in the east. "Samuel would be glad it was used," he said softly. The old man's truth had been revealed. It wasn't just that he was a man of prayer, he was a man of quiet, enduring love, a love that had labored in secret, a love that had prepared a place of safety long before the threat was ever seen. His faith wasn't passive, it was the concrete and sweat of a shelter, the legacy of a son, and the courage to lead others to safety when the world was falling apart. They had mocked the old man's prayer, but the storm had revealed his truth, that the deepest prayers are often lived, not just spoken, and sometimes the most steadfast guardian is the one you least expect, a quiet soul whose life itself is a shelter from the storm. In the broken landscape, surrounded by the miracle of their survival, they all understood. The greatest strength is often clothed in gentleness, and the most profound plans are often laid with a love that outlasts even the fiercest tempest. Soft piano melody returns, gentle and hopeful. Share this story if it reminded you that kindness and preparation are silent guardians, often hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment they are needed most.